The scorching sun had been beating down mercilessly on the busy highway all afternoon. Cars sped by in a blur, their windows tinted and air conditioners humming, while the heat shimmered on the asphalt like waves on a desert sand. Sarah, a single mother of two, was driving her old, rattling car back from the grocery store. The weight of the day hung heavy on her shoulders, bills unpaid, an empty fridge at home, and the constant struggle to keep her children happy. As she rounded a bend, she noticed a lone figure sitting by the roadside. The man was slumped against a dusty tree, looking exhausted, thirsty, and out of place amidst the bustle of the city outskirts. His clothes were expensive, but rumpled. His shoes expensive, but dusty. Something about him caught Sarah's attention. Maybe it was his tired eyes or the way he watched the passing cars as if hoping for a miracle. Without much thought, Sarah pulled over. She grabbed a bottle of water from her car's cup holder and walked toward him. "Are you all right?" she asked gently, holding out the water. The man looked up, surprised. A faint smile played on his lips. "Thank you," he said quietly, taking the bottle. His voice was calm but carried the fatigue of someone who had traveled far and faced many battles. Sarah nodded, feeling a strange warmth spread inside her chest. She didn't know why she felt compelled to stop, to help. Maybe it was her own struggles that made her empathetic. Maybe it was just kindness. The man took a few sips, then looked around nervously. "I'm Mark," he finally said. "I guess you saved me more than just from thirst." Sarah smiled shyly, introducing herself. They exchanged a few words, small talk about the heat, the busy road, and the unpredictability of life. Mark didn't say much about himself, only enough to keep the conversation going. Sarah could tell he was a man used to being in control, but right now he seemed vulnerable. Neither of them noticed the time passing, lost in a moment that neither expected. For Sarah, this meeting was a brief pause from her chaotic life. For Mark, a reminder that sometimes even the most powerful need a helping hand. What Sarah didn't know, as she helped this tired traveler on that hot afternoon, was that Mark was no ordinary man. He was the CEO of a billion-dollar company, a titan in the business world whose decisions affected thousands. But right now, he was just a man in need of kindness. And that kindness was about to change both their lives forever. After their chance meeting by the roadside, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious man named Mark. Something about him lingered in her mind, the tired eyes that hid a story much deeper than she could imagine. Life had been a relentless struggle for her, but in that brief moment, she saw a glimpse of something different. Hope, perhaps, or simply kindness exchanged between two strangers. Days passed, and then, unexpectedly, Mark showed up again. This time not as a weary traveler, but standing confidently outside the small cafe where Sarah worked part-time to make ends meet. His sharp suit and polished shoes seemed out of place in the humble neighborhood, yet his eyes held the same warmth she remembered. "Sarah," he greeted, his voice steady but soft. "I wanted to thank you again for that day and for reminding me what truly matters." Sarah was taken aback. She never expected him to find her, let alone come back. But something about Mark made her feel seen. Like her struggles, her sacrifices for her children were not invisible after all. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed more often. Mark was no longer the distant CEO she'd only heard about in news headlines. He was becoming a friend, someone who listened without judgment, who shared small moments of laughter and quiet conversation. He learned about her children, about the tightrope she walked between work and parenting, about the dreams she tucked away because life left no room for them. Mark, in turn, began to reveal parts of himself, the pressure of running a vast empire, the loneliness hidden behind wealth and success, and a yearning for connection beyond boardrooms and business deals. For the first time in years, he felt comfortable letting his guard down. Their growing connection wasn't rushed. It unfolded in the gentle rhythm of trust building. Sarah found herself smiling more, feeling a lightness she hadn't known in years. Mark discovered a new kind of strength and vulnerability. Yet beneath the surface, both wondered how different their worlds truly were and whether they could bridge the gap. Sarah worried about the realities that divided them. Mark feared that his world might overwhelm hers. But for now, in these quiet moments of shared coffee and heartfelt talks, They simply enjoyed what was. Two souls finding solace in each other's company, unaware of the profound impact their bond would soon have on their lives. As their friendship deepened, Sarah and Mark grew closer, yet both carried hidden burdens they hadn't dared share. One evening, as the sun dipped below the city skyline, Mark invited Sarah to his penthouse, a world so different from her own that she almost hesitated to enter. Inside, amidst sleek furniture and shimmering lights, Mark's vulnerability finally surfaced. "Sarah," he began, voice barely above a whisper, "there's something you need to know. I'm not just any businessman. I'm the CEO of a billion-dollar company. My life is far from simple." Sarah stared at him, stunned, her heart pounding. The man who seemed so kind, so genuine, held a secret that felt like a chasm between them. "I wanted to tell you sooner," Mark said, his eyes searching hers, "but I was afraid you'd see me differently." Sarah swallowed hard, the weight of his confession settling in. The luxurious world he belonged to was nothing like her reality, struggling to pay bills, raising her children alone, battling exhaustion. Would this revelation change everything? But instead of fear or judgment, she felt a strange calm. Mark's honesty was a gift, a bridge to understanding. "Thank you for trusting me," she said softly. Yet as they shared this truth, the walls around their hearts trembled. Mark confessed the loneliness behind the success, the pressure to maintain a perfect image, and the fear that no one could truly know him. Sarah spoke of her hardships, the relentless grind of single motherhood, and the quiet hope for something better. Their secrets unveiled didn't divide them. They intertwined, weaving a deeper bond. But the real test was yet to come. Unbeknownst to Sarah, Mark's world was not only one of wealth, but also filled with powerful enemies and complex family expectations that threatened to pull them apart. As the night wore on, they promised to face whatever came together, their connection now grounded in truth, but shadowed by the unknown challenges looming ahead. The days following Mark's confession brought a whirlwind of emotions for both Sarah and him. While their bond had grown stronger with honesty, the stark realities of their very different worlds began to surface with unforgiving force. Sarah returned home one evening, exhausted from a double shift, only to find Mark waiting for her outside the modest apartment she shared with her children. His usually calm demeanor was replaced by a tense urgency. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low but firm. Inside, Mark revealed the first of many obstacles: his family. The patriarch of the empire, Mark's father, had long expected Mark to marry within their social class, someone with the pedigree, connections, and polished image befitting a billionaire's heir. Sarah's humble background, her struggles as a single mom, were exactly what the family wanted to avoid. "I told them about you," Mark admitted, eyes heavy with frustration. "They don't approve. They think you're a distraction, a problem." Sarah's heart sank. The very man she had grown to trust was now caught in a battle she couldn't fight alone. The wealthy world that Mark inhabited was merciless, and it threatened to tear them apart. But the conflict didn't stop there. Mark's enemies, rivals within the corporate world who resented his rise to power, soon caught wind of his relationship. Unkind rumors began swirling, threatening not just his reputation but Sarah's safety. She noticed strangers watching her, mysterious calls in the middle of the night, and a growing tension she couldn't explain. "Maybe this was a mistake," Sarah whispered one night, her voice breaking under the weight of fear and doubt. "Maybe we come from two worlds that can never meet." Mark reached for her hand, steady and determined. "I won't let anyone hurt you. We'll face this together, but I need you to be strong." The tension spilled into their everyday lives. Sarah struggled to balance the pressures of her job, her children, and the sudden attention their relationship attracted. Mark grappled with business battles and family expectations that clawed at his resolve. Misunderstandings grew. A harsh word here, a missed call there. The distance between them seemed to widen despite their best intentions. Yet amidst the storm, they found moments of tenderness, quiet embraces, shared dreams whispered in the dark, reminding them why they fought so hard to stay together. But the conflict was far from over. The forces aligned against them were growing stronger, and the choices ahead would test the very limits of their love and resilience. The weight of the mounting pressures soon began to take its toll on Sarah's spirit. Each day felt heavier than the last as doubts crept silently into her heart, whispering fears she tried desperately to ignore. One rainy evening, after putting her children to bed, Sarah sat alone by the window, staring out at the city lights blurred by raindrops. The glow of distant cars and flickering street lamps only seemed to deepen her loneliness. She thought about Mark, the man who had changed her world so unexpectedly, his kindness, his unwavering support, but also the battles he faced and the challenges now threatening their fragile happiness. Could she really fit into his world? Could someone like her, a struggling single mom with scars from a difficult past, ever belong in the elite circles he moved through? The answer felt painfully clear. No matter how much she wanted it, the gap between their lives seemed too wide, too impossible to bridge. The calls from Mark became less frequent. When they did speak, his voice was tired, distracted. She sensed his own doubts, his worries about the future they both longed for, but couldn't see clearly. One evening, after an argument sparked by a misunderstanding, Sarah found herself questioning everything. Maybe this isn't meant to be, she murmured to herself, tears blurring her vision. Maybe love isn't enough. She thought about her children, the little faces she fought for every day. Was dragging them into this complicated world the right choice? Would they be safe? Would they be happy? Her heart ached as she grappled with the fear that love might not conquer all. The sacrifices were mounting, the battles unrelenting. Could she be strong enough for what lay ahead? Yet beneath the doubt, a small flame of hope still flickered. It whispered that true love was not about perfection, but about fighting together through the storm. Sarah wiped her tears and took a deep breath. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new choices. But tonight, she allowed herself the vulnerability to feel the fear, knowing that strength could only grow through moments like this. The morning sun broke through the heavy clouds, casting a golden light over the city. For Sarah, it felt like a sign, a fresh chance to rebuild what had begun to crumble. After the painful night of doubt, she woke with a renewed determination to fight for the future she dreamed of, not just for herself, but for her children and Mark. The day started with a simple message from Mark, apologizing for the silence and misunderstandings. His words carried warmth and honesty, reminding Sarah of the genuine connection they shared. It was a small spark, but enough to kindle the hope that had nearly been extinguished. They agreed to meet at a quiet cafe, away from the chaos of their busy lives. Sitting across from each other, the tension melted into tentative smiles and open hearts. Mark shared stories of his struggles, the immense pressure of running a billion-dollar empire, the loneliness that came with it, and the fear of losing someone like Sarah. His vulnerability surprised her and made her realize that beneath his polished exterior was a man just as human and uncertain as she was. Sarah, too, opened up about her fears, her past hardships, and the dreams she held close despite everything. For the first time, they truly listened, not just to words but to the emotions behind them. As the hours passed, their bond deepened. The shared understanding and acceptance created a safe space where hope could grow. Outside, the world bustled with life, but inside the small cafe, time seemed to slow. They laughed, they dreamed, and they planned, daring to imagine a future where their different worlds could merge. Later, as they walked hand in hand through the park, Sarah felt the weight of uncertainty lift, replaced by a quiet confidence. Hope wasn't just a fleeting feeling anymore. It was a promise, a new beginning born from honesty, forgiveness, and courage. And though challenges still awaited, they faced them together, knowing that sometimes rekindling hope was the strongest step toward true love. Underneath a sky painted with the soft hues of twilight, Sarah and Mark found themselves standing in a quiet garden, the air thick with unspoken emotions. The world around them seemed to pause, as if holding its breath for the moment that was about to unfold. Mark looked into Sarah's eyes, the man who had once been a distant figure, now feeling closer than ever. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for hers, the gesture simple but filled with profound meaning. "I know we come from different worlds," he began softly, his voice steady despite the nerves underneath. "But what I feel for you, it's real. I don't want to lose you. Not now, not ever." Sarah's heart swelled with a mixture of hope and vulnerability. She had guarded herself for so long, afraid to fully trust anyone, yet here was a man who saw her, all of her struggles, her fears, her dreams, and embraced them without hesitation. "I want to believe in us," she whispered, squeezing his hand. "But it's not easy." Mark smiled, a gentle reassurance shining through. "Nothing worth having ever is. But I promise you this. I will fight for you, for your children, for our future. Together we can face anything." The weight of those words settled between them like a sacred vow, binding their hearts with an unbreakable thread. They stood there for a moment longer, the promise hanging in the air like a beacon of light in the fading dusk. For Sarah, it was more than just words. It was a commitment to trust, to hope, and to love, despite the uncertainties ahead. And as they walked back toward the city lights, hand in hand, the promise they made that evening became the foundation on which their new life would be built. The days that followed felt lighter, almost magical, as if the promise Mark and Sarah made had lifted an invisible weight from their shoulders. Life, with all its unpredictability, had begun to show them moments of pure happiness, the kind they hadn't dared to hope for. One rainy afternoon, as droplets tapped softly against the window pane of Sarah's small apartment, a surprise awaited them both. Mark had planned a quiet celebration for Sarah and her children, not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, but with simple joys that spoke directly to their hearts. When Sarah opened the door, she found Mark standing there with a bouquet of wildflowers, a shy smile lighting his face. Behind him were the kids, holding a handmade card and beaming with excitement. The room filled with laughter as they settled around the worn coffee table, sharing stories and dreams over hot cocoa. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt the warmth of belonging, of family. Not just the one she was born into, but the one she was choosing to build. That evening, Mark's son, a quiet boy who had been hesitant to open up, surprised everyone by playing the piano softly in the corner. His music was imperfect but heartfelt, and it brought tears to Sarah's eyes. The children clapped and cheered, and even Sarah found herself joining in the joyous noise. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights. Mark and Sarah stepped out onto the small balcony, wrapped in a shared blanket, watching the world sparkle with fresh life. "This," Mark whispered, "is what I was missing. This joy, this family. I never knew it could be like this." Sarah smiled, her heart full. "Sometimes joy comes when we least expect it, when we open our hearts despite the risks." In that moment, the fears and doubts that had once haunted them seemed distant, replaced by a hopeful certainty. The unexpected joy wasn't just in the celebrations or the music, but in the quiet moments of connection, trust, and love that grew stronger every day. As the city hummed softly below, they stood together, ready to face whatever came next, strengthened by the simple truth that happiness could be found even in the most unlikely places. As the seasons changed, so did the rhythm of Sarah and Mark's lives. What had started as a fragile hope began to face the inevitable challenges that test any relationship. The reality of their worlds, so different yet intertwined, pressed upon them like a tide threatening to pull them apart. Sarah, juggling the responsibilities of motherhood and her modest job, sometimes felt overwhelmed. There were days when exhaustion blurred the edges of her hope, and doubts crept in like shadows. Mark's demanding role as CEO pulled him into long hours, frequent travel, and the constant scrutiny of the public eye. The pressures weighed heavily, and moments of tension began to surface. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Sarah found herself alone in the kitchen, the silence almost deafening. She clutched a worn photograph of her children and Mark, wondering if this dream they built was strong enough to survive. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mark, apologizing for missing dinner again. The ache in her chest deepened. Meanwhile, Mark sat in a sleek office tower, staring out at the city lights. He felt torn between his duty to his company and his desire to be present for Sarah and her kids. The loneliness of his position was a stark contrast to the warmth he longed for at home. Their conversations, once filled with laughter and promises, now carried a subtle tension. Miscommunications, unspoken worries, and moments of frustration. Friends and family noticed the strain, offering advice, but the real battle was theirs to fight. Yet through these trials, something remarkable happened. Despite the weariness and the storms, they chose to keep trying. Sarah's fierce determination to protect her family and Mark's growing awareness of what truly mattered began to bridge the gap between them. They started carving out time, stolen weekends, late-night talks, and small acts of kindness that spoke volumes. The conflicts didn't disappear, but the love beneath them grew more resilient. One night, after a heartfelt conversation where they shared their fears and hopes without judgment, Sarah and Mark found themselves embracing, not just each other, but the imperfect journey they were on. The test of time isn't about never breaking, Mark said softly. It's about choosing to stay and rebuild every time we fall. Sarah nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. It's hard, but I believe in us. We're stronger than the challenges. As they held each other close, the world outside continued its endless spin. But inside their small circle, a quiet strength blossomed. A promise that no matter what trials lay ahead, their bond could endure. After weathering countless storms, Sarah and Mark stood on the edge of a new chapter. Fragile but full of promise. The challenges they had faced were like cracks in a vase. But instead of breaking, those cracks now shimmered like gold, marking a story of survival and growth. The air was crisp with the fresh scent of spring, symbolic of renewal. Sarah woke early, her heart lighter than it had been in months. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where stability and happiness could coexist. The children, sensing the change, laughed more freely, their worries easing like the thawing ice outside. Mark was equally transformed. He had made hard decisions, prioritizing family over work, delegating responsibilities, and setting boundaries to protect the delicate balance they'd fought to create. The boardroom still awaited him, but his mind was clearer, his purpose sharper. One bright Saturday morning, they gathered in the small park near Sarah's apartment. The sun warmed their faces as the kids played on swings and slides. Sarah sat on a bench beside Mark, feeling the warmth of his hand gently squeeze hers. "This," Mark said quietly, "is what I've been missing." Sarah smiled, her eyes reflecting the golden light. "Me too. It's not perfect, but it's ours." They talked openly about dreams long deferred, a bigger home, better education for the children, and perhaps one day a wedding that celebrated not just their love, but their journey. The past's wounds hadn't vanished, but they no longer dictated the terms of their future. Their community, once distant and skeptical, began to notice the change. Neighbors who had offered sympathetic smiles now shared warm greetings. Sarah's co-workers saw a newfound confidence in her, and Mark's colleagues respected his renewed focus on what mattered most. Together, they planned small adventures, weekend trips to the countryside, family dinners filled with laughter, and quiet evenings watching movies. Each moment was a brick in the foundation of their new life. Yet beneath the joy, both remained mindful. The past had taught them that life's tests were never truly over. But now they faced them not as isolated individuals, but as a united front. One evening, as the city lights twinkled around them, Mark looked at Sarah with steady eyes. "I want to build a future with you, one where we keep choosing each other no matter what." Sarah's heart swelled. "I believe in us, Mark. Let's take this journey together." Their story was no longer just about survival. It was about hope, love, and the courage to begin again. The path ahead was uncertain, but with hands clasped and hearts aligned, Sarah and Mark stepped forward into the light of their new beginning. As the new beginning blossomed for Sarah and Mark, an unexpected storm loomed on the horizon, one that would demand the greatest test of their love and courage. Just when they thought their struggles were behind them, fate reminded them that sacrifices are sometimes the price of true happiness. It started with a call that shattered the fragile peace they had built. Mark received news that the company he had worked so hard to protect was on the brink of collapse due to a sudden financial scandal. Investors were pulling out, and the media frenzy threatened to destroy not only his career, but the stability they had fought so hard to achieve. Sarah saw the change in Mark immediately. The weight of the world settling on his shoulders, the sleepless nights, the silent moments filled with worry. But beyond the professional crisis, a more personal challenge arose. The scandal involved some questionable decisions made by people close to Mark, and he was faced with a heartbreaking choice: protect his own reputation or expose the truth, even if it meant losing everything. One evening, Mark sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by unopened letters and messages, the glow of the streetlight casting long shadows on his tired face. Sarah approached quietly, her eyes filled with both fear and unwavering support. "Whatever happens, we face it together," she said softly. Mark looked up, his voice heavy but resolute. "I have to come clean, Sarah. If I don't, it will haunt me forever. But it might cost us everything: my job, our home, your trust in me." The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings, press conferences, and soul-searching conversations. Mark chose integrity over convenience. He revealed the truth publicly, taking responsibility for what he could control and distancing himself from those who had betrayed the company's values. The fallout was severe. Investors pulled out faster than expected, and Mark was forced to resign. Their savings dwindled as they fought legal battles and mounting bills. The community that had once admired them now whispered doubts and judgment. But through it all, Sarah never wavered. She took on extra work, managing the household and caring for their children with fierce determination. Her love was the anchor that kept Mark grounded, reminding him why the sacrifice was worth it. One night after the children were asleep, Mark held Sarah close and whispered, "I lost everything but gained what matters most. You and the kids. That's a fortune no scandal can take away." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. "We're stronger because we chose each other. No matter what comes next, we face it as one." The ultimate sacrifice had tested their bond, but it also revealed its true strength. Their love was no longer just a promise, it was a commitment forged in hardship and hope. As dawn broke, they stood side by side, ready to rebuild their lives on the foundation of honesty, sacrifice, and an unbreakable family bond. After the storm of trials and sacrifices, a calm began to settle over Sarah and Mark's lives. The chaos that once threatened to tear them apart had passed, leaving behind a clearer path toward peace, healing, and new dreams. Their journey had been long and painful, but now it was time to weave together all the threads of their story in a harmonious future. The community, which once doubted them, started to see the genuine strength of their bond. Slowly, respect and admiration replaced whispers of judgment. Sarah's courage and unwavering support for Mark during the darkest days became a beacon of hope for others facing adversity. Mark, too, found a renewed sense of purpose, not in wealth or status, but in the simple joys of family and honest living. Their home, once shadowed by fear and uncertainty, blossomed with laughter and warmth. The children, who had witnessed their parents' resilience, grew up feeling safe and loved, their hearts full of hope and possibility. Even on the toughest days, the family gathered around the dinner table, sharing stories and dreams, their voices blending in a comforting harmony. Mark's decision to step away from the corporate world opened unexpected doors. With Sarah's encouragement, he pursued a passion project, a community center focused on helping struggling families rebuild their lives. It was a humble beginning, but it gave Mark a profound sense of fulfillment and a chance to give back in a way money never could. Sarah, who had long put her own dreams on hold, rediscovered her love for painting. Her vibrant artworks, inspired by their journey, soon caught the attention of local galleries. It was a small but meaningful victory, proof that even in hardship, creativity and hope could flourish. Together they learned that true success wasn't measured by wealth or accolades, but by the depth of love and the strength to rise after every fall. Their story became one of redemption, forgiveness, and the enduring power of family. One evening, as the sun set in warm golden hues, Sarah and Mark sat on their porch, holding hands and watching their children play. The quiet peace around them spoke louder than words, a testament to the battles they'd fought and the love that had carried them through. Mark smiled softly and said, "We've come so far, and yet this feels like just the beginning." Sarah nodded, her eyes shining with hope. "Our harmony isn't perfect, but it's ours, and that's all that matters." As the stars began to twinkle overhead, they felt a deep sense of gratitude for the struggles, for the sacrifices, and most of all, for the unbreakable bond that had turned their story into a beautiful symphony. one that would echo through the years to come.